Hey, how you guys doing? How you doing on the YouTube? I wanted to post a quick kind of video. Well, it's not gonna be too quick, but it's a video I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is a overall practice pad kind of shopping guide / review of my entire collection. So I'll probably post separate videos of each one, segment the video. Just that way, because when people search for practice pads, they usually either search what's the best practice pad to buy for marching snare, best practice pad to buy for drumline, or they'll search whatever particular practice pad they're looking for. A little bit of background: I've been drumming for 10 years. I've marched percussion for 4, and I've done 7 seasons over that time through outdoor and indoor percussion. So been in different environments, and I've been going through different drum pads as the years went by. And I thought I probably touched or owned most practice pads that are pretty relevant within the marching scene. Maybe except anything in the past year or two, like brand new businesses. Because even if it's a brand new pad, an old business, it's usually just a upscale or new version of the original practice pad, but it's usually not too much different. Like with the Reflex pad, they started doing different colors now, I think, and then with the off-world pad, you'll usually have different like styles and whatnot, but they usually do the same material for their marching series. To be honest with you, they're all pretty much the same. And when I do the Outlander, I'll explain why that's probably my best recommendation out of any of the other practice pads. Even if you think you need the full 15 or the full 12-inch practice pad, the full foot there, I'd probably recommend against it, unless you're made of cash. But one thing I want to preface is that if you're looking around for a practice pad, but you already have a perfectly usable one, and there's no severe detriment, whatever, you're just looking because you want a new practice pad, stop. You don't need one. People, want to get a fancy new practice pad, but if yours is already fully pretty much okay, then it doesn't really make too much of a difference, because you're not going to become a better player just because you're getting a different pad. But with that, I'll start getting into some of the practice pads. Alright, for people that don't have a lot of time and want to just look at what is the best practice pad in my opinion, and what I found just for general practice and playing for years and years, and what I would think would probably be the best in helping you to play better, helping your practice sessions, and using new tech or innovations to help better your practice and speed it along. And that would be the Reflex pad. And it's a pretty simple concept. Now, if you need a practice pad for with COVID times, before COVID, I probably would have just recommended this pad only. But since COVID, there is a reason why I will recommend 2 pads. It's used the shimmer a good bit actually on the thing. But the reason I recommend the Reflex pad is because a practice pad is meant to serve you. It's meant to give you better practicing environment, or at least to help you develop your skills until you get to the marching snare, because buying your own marching snare is a little pointless. So my favorite practice pad, the one I still take with me to college despite the fact that I don't march anymore, is the Reflex pad. And the reason for that is because it's not only a playing pad, it's not a performance pad or anything like that, but it's a playing pad and a chops pad. So when you're doing practicing, you want to be able to develop your chops. You're not going to develop your chops while you play, you're going to do it while you practice. And anything that can help you develop your chops further while you practice is going to help you out long term when you want to get back onto the actual snare and you perform. That's why you have practice sticks and marching sticks. My practice sticks that I recommend are the ProMark Fire Grains. The reason for that is because while I do love some of the thicker sticks that are produced by Vic Firth, and Vic Firth is my go-to stick brand, with Tom Ungst probably being my favorite outdoor stick for its heavy, dense material, and the white finish is pretty nice. They aren't as durable always as I would like. They are durable, don't get me wrong, but Fire Grain are just something special. They have a bit more of a tone to them, which different drumsticks do have different tones, while being a little bit more heavy, so they still have a more dead tone, and you wouldn't want to perform with them. For practicing, they're pretty much perfect because Fire Grains are new tech from ProMark that make it one of the most dense sticks you can find. The reason the Reflex pad is great is because you have two different surfaces here, made out of two different sizes of gum rubber. So the gum rubber on the side here, this left side, which facing you, is a 3/4 of an inch gum rubber. It's about as thick as gum rubber as you're ever going to find. And this one is going to provide a solid rebound and balance for whenever you're just playing through a piece and you need to be able to move fast. So, and it's a really quiet practice pad too. It's one of the quietest practice pads I've been able to find, because other practice pads will say, oh, we're silent. No practice pad is going to be silent. They're going to be heard. But this is probably one of the quietest ones I've found. 9 times out of 10, if you have a door with a closed door, across the hall from your, down the hall from your roommate if you're in college, or if you're in a house full with family, this is probably the practice pad they're going to like the most. Because this practice pad, I don't even know if you guys can hear that. It's the quietest practice pad I've been able to find. That still provides a good enough rebound and balance that lets me be able to work on whatever piece I need to at the tempo that I can play it at with regular chops. Because if you're only playing on these dead rebound, no sound practice pads, then you'll never know how you sound whenever you get back to the marching snare. Now the other side is a 1/2 inch gum rubber that they use with some special fancy material, because they won't announce their secrets, but is their conditioning side. So this versus and I'm just dropping the stick there. So it's almost no rebound. You can tell the paradiddles are getting a little, worse, because there's not as much rebound. So this is really good for chop building. If you can play the piece on this side, you will kill it on any other surface, because this side really makes your wrists work, really makes your hands work, and it gives you just enough rebound that you don't have to deal with carpal tunnel. That's the problem with moon gel pads or anything else that is a conditioning pad. I don't recommend any other conditioning pad aside from the Blue Thunder ProMark Prologix pad. If you can get your hands on it, it's really difficult to do for some reason these days, because they just don't sell their Logic series anymore. But I don't recommend a moon gel pad, because a moon gel pad is like hitting a pillow. There is no rebound. Whatever they put into it, it's like hitting literal like gel. It's like a liquid. It's like if you took one of those liquid ice packs and you played on that. Doing that over time, trying to give yourself rebound, will eventually give you carpal tunnel, because your wrists are doing so much work that you're gonna like cut the circulation off. And that's why as percussionists we do really need to stretch before we play. But this gives you just enough rebound that I've never felt a problem with it. I've never had my wrists hurt after a moon gel pad. I have had my wrist hurt. After a Blue Thunder, it takes longer, but it does happen. I do not own either of those pads to show you, but I have played on them, and they do make my wrists hurt. That's why I recommend Reflex pad for conditioning, and then the other side for playing. It's not a performance pad, so if during COVID times now, where we have to send audition videos, this will not help display your playing. This is not gonna help your audience hear it unless you have like a really good microphone for some reason. And even then, I don't think they'll prefer it because it doesn't give the same rebound as that stock snare that they're looking for. They might think it's like, oh, he's got pad hands, because the other side that isn't the conditioning side is a little extra spongy. So that's something to take in consideration. If you wanted to take it to practice and you needed to practice a lot of butt end sticks, like stabbing into it, that's not good for pads in general, but for this pad in particular, it's actually really bad for it. And this pad also in particular does not take elements well. That's why I always keep it in its drawstring bag that it came with, because water will kill this pad, extreme heat will kill this pad, stabbing into it will eventually kill this pad. So it's a sensitive thing because of the material they use, but if you can maintain it, it's a really, really good practice tool. I highly recommend it. It's about $60 last I checked. Next up in the series of practice pads that I personally own and I would recommend, this one also comes as probably the best all-rounder that you can get. I don't think it's the best for practice in general, but I think it's the best for overall. If you were to get one pad only the rest of your career, which you should, don't be me and get obsessed with different materials and specs and all that, is the Outlander by Offworld. The reason I recommend the Outlander versus the Invader, which is their full 12-inch foot-long radius pad, is because you don't need it. You don't need it. This has the same material. It's the same thickness as the Outlander, as the Invader, sorry. It just doesn't have as nice of a rim. That's the only difference. And even then, the rim on that pad is louder. And it's also really hard to carry around. It's a thick, heavy pad. Most backpacks just straight up will not be able to hold it. This, the small, not the medium, small, is a 9-inch pad. That is more than enough for any kind of movement, any kind of dynamic differences. So if I need to play, more towards the front of the pad, towards the back of the pad, you're gonna get this back logo either way, so don't even worry about that. But the rim sounds nice and snappy. It's good. Sorry if you can hear that. The marching band actually at the high school is playing right now. But the material that they use on this, really bouncy, really articulate. If you play marching snare, Offworld is the brand to go, and I would go with the Outlander. The reason I would go with the Outlander is it's only 9 inches. You can fit it in almost every single bag. The rim is a low profile plastic rim. It is not a high metal rim, so you're not going to have to deal with accidentally hitting rim shots and then chewing through your sticks, because that's a problem with the metal rim, is that you'll chew through practice sticks. And if you're breaking practice sticks, then and you're also breaking performance sticks because you're playing on snare, the cost racks up over time, and it's honestly not worth it. And you get this surface on the back as well. It is a non-slip surface here that you can play on if you need like a little bit quieter, but if you play with any kind of accents or anything, it's gonna play through anyway, so it doesn't really matter. and it will never be as quiet as a conditioning pad, like a Reflex pad. It's also just not recommended to play on. Like, kids will do it all the time to be a little bit quieter. I understand that, but it's not what it's meant for. It's meant to keep your pad from slipping around and moving on a 9-inch pad like this. It's really, really important. 9 inches is about as small as I would go in order to have a pad that's still functional while not moving around as much. Because if you try to go any smaller, then you have to get a leg strap, and if you go any bigger, you can go bigger, but if you want a smaller practice pad, 9 inches is just about good, because you're not going to get anything between 6 and 9 really, and if you can, it's going to be weird, and 6-inch practice pads really aren't that useful. So the Visitor and any of the new off-world pads that they're doing, like the Visitor and all that stuff with the modules, and it's a really expensive pad for no reason. I think the pad itself is $45 now. It was $70 when it first came out. The modules are like an extra $25 each if you want snare sound or whatever, which just means it's going to put beads on the bottom of your pad. Unless you are like Ralph Nader or any of those guys that practice and perform online, and if you are, you're probably not watching this video, and you perform on a practice pad, like that's how you play. You don't play on a marching snare, you play on a practice pad, and that's your show. You don't need beads in it. It's really useless. It's for show, it's for effect, it's for sound, and you don't need that when you play, because it doesn't affect your playing. So don't invest. It's not worth the extra money. If you need a all-around pad to simulate a snare, go with the Outlander. The low profile rim, save your sticks. The articulate surface that they use, I forget what proprietary thing they call it. I think it's their like, I forget honestly. It's stupid. It's just really good. And if you need to clean it, like I should probably clean mine, turtle wax. By the way, if you have a bunch of little holes in it, that's usually how they ship, so don't be worried. I ended up posting on Reddit about that. Don't worry about it. The only reason I even have this pad though is because I was actually without a performance pad when I was trying to audition for a drum line, and all I had was my Reflex pad. And if you're trying to record an audition, a conditioning pad is not enough, because it's not going to display your playing as well, because they're not going to be able to hear it. That's why this pad is overall great. I still recommend you get a conditioning pad, but this is your one-stop shop. This is $35. $35, that's it. It's cheaper than the Reflex pad. That's cheaper than the Innovative Percussion pad. That's cheaper than most or all pretty much 12-inch pads. And it provides the best size in my opinion. So that's the Outlander pad. The next pad in the series of pads that I'll be reviewing here that I own is probably, well, it's my favorite design on a pad because I put it on myself, and it's the one pad I don't recommend to people almost ever, and it's also a really popular thing, and that is the 12-inch Xymox pad, ID pad. This is a pad I've had for quite a long time. It's really thick, really heavy, and I don't recommend it for a lot of reasons, even though you can put your own fancy artwork on it, like a samurai attacking a wave. It's pretty cool. One thing to note, if you do end up getting a Xymox pad, get the snare beads in it, because this back low profile side that you think is a little quieter, because it says it's a little quieter, is quieter if you play at 3 inches and even 6 inches, but as soon as you go to 9 or 12, it'll just play right through, and it'll be almost like if you were playing on the other side. So if you're playing at like 3 inches and you really need to be quieter, even if you play with some velocity and do some accents, it'll play right through. It doesn't matter. You get a little bit more of this surface anyway, but just get the snare beads if you do end up getting a Xymox ID pad, which I don't recommend. But it's touted as basically the end-all, be-all, best pad you can get. If you get the ID pad, which I got on sale for 50% off one Memorial Day for like $60. They were doing $60 for ID pads, I think $50 for regulars, and then they were doing like $120 for tender pads. $60 for this pad is fine. I wouldn't recommend it as a go-to pad, but it's still a fine price for it. $120, do not do it. It's really not worth it. It's a toy. It's a flashy toy. It's, you know, when people get it, it's because it's like, oh, I have a Xymox pad. It really doesn't help with anything. It's articulate, sure, and it's snappy, but it's really loud, so it doesn't make it really good for any quiet environment that you need it to be. And it also has this glassy surface, which a lot of articulate pads have, that I really don't like. And because it feels like your sticks will glide on it. It doesn't really grip it like a snare would. Like a marching snare, you'd think would, but it's rigid. It has this grid-like structure, usually made out of carbon fiber or other materials, and it will catch your stick to a degree. This does not do that. This has a glossy surface where your sticks will start to glide across and not, you know, be caught as much. I also think it sounds really weird. That's why with the snare beads, it like kind of sounds like a snare. So if you're a Ralph Nader or whatnot, you know, you probably do have this pad already, and you're probably not watching this video, and you're just doing it to confirm your own thing. This also has one of the things I hate about modern snare practice pads, and that is metal rims. I'm not even going to play it because I like these sticks, and I really value these sticks because they're my favorite practice sticks. The thing I hate about especially high-profile metal rims, not as much as I do on the Invader by Off-World Percussion, because theirs is thinner, so it's a lot more of like a razor edge, which I don't like because it'll cut in more, is that eventually, while you hit, you know, rim shots and gawk shots and all that, you will eat into the stick. There actually is some bumps and grooves on these sticks, and I've never hit a marching snare with them. It's literally just from these metal rims on some of these practice pads, this one in particular. So between breaking performance sticks when you're actually playing on the marching snare and breaking practice sticks because you got a metal rim, the money starts to rack up fast. $120 for the pad, $10 for replacement practice sticks every now and again, every 2 months, because you're literally breaking your sticks while you're practicing. Over the course of a year, which, by the way, is about as long as it takes for these things to ship. They take an enormous amount of time to ship as well, which most people complain about. Memorial Day, I think, was in March, and I didn't get this. Yeah, I shipped it out from March the one year I got it, and then it didn't come until October. The benefit is you forget about it, and it does feel like, oh, happy birthday to me, even though you paid for it. But the fact that it takes 6 to 8 months to ship on average is pretty atrocious, and that's if they're doing fine stock-wise. With Corona, I don't even know what Xymox is up to right now, but they're kind of the best in the biz, and they're the most flashy in the biz, but I don't know, most seasoned players will probably tell you that this is too much for what you need. I mean, I think they capitalize on the fact that the marching audience is predominantly, high schoolers. So they'll want something flashy like this and all this, and you can put your own graphic on it. You can stylize what color you want the rim to be, what color you want the base to be. You can put snare beads in it and be like, oh, it's like a marching snare. But in actuality, unless you're doing like YouTube videos, you're really never going to use this because it's too loud to justify within most practice environments. And trust me, the other side does, like, if you play with any amount of velocity, it'll strike through and it'll be very high pitched and people will hear it throughout the house. It will not make a difference. So do yourself a favor, save the money, do not buy this pad, get an off-world, and get the Outlander. The Outlander is $35. So you can buy, if you need to do a tenor pad. Now, tenor pad for $120. If this was on sale for $120, and you could get a Xymox tenor pad. Now, I'm not a tenor player, so I wouldn't know, but I think that's a pretty good deal from what I've seen tenor pads to be. Because tenor pads can go from anywhere to like their minimum usually like $100, so like $120, $140. To go anything less than that, they're not really tenor pads as much as it's just a bunch of gum rubber. Like with the Vic Firth pad, I think is less, but it still might be $120. You could buy feasibly like 3 or 4 of these Outlander pads before you ever were able to afford this pad at retail price. And if you're telling yourself, oh well, I want the articulate surface and the glass coat and all that stuff, Off-World makes laminates for this pad. They come in a bunch of different styles. They'll say carbon fiber, blue chameleon, red polka dot, whatever. And they will have that glassy, articulate, marching surface that is exactly the same as what everyone else is using. All of that glassy, articulate surface is all the same. Except if you do an insert. If you glue it on, it's exactly the same. They quite literally, if you were to take this apart, do a gum rubber bottom with this laminate just glued on. It's the only difference. And the only thing holding it down is the rim and the glue. So that's the Xymox pad. I don't recommend it, but most people love it. That's just my take on it. The last pad in my series of pads in my collection that I would recommend for general use, and if you want something a little different, is what used to be my old reliable and my go-to travel pad before I had to get the Outlander because I left this pad back home and was without a performance pad, is the Prologix 12-inch arching pad. Now, Prologix is kind of weird. They've been in the business for quite a bit of time. Not a lot of people know about them because they're honestly not as good. I kind of attached to them when I started marching because they made pretty good 6-inch pads. I actually do have that 6-inch pad I still got from Dayton, Ohio when I did drumline championships, indoor drumline championships there. And they make okay pads. They make surfaceable pads. And they do it at a reasonable price. 12-inch is going to be $60. Your 6-inch, if you can get one, is probably going to be $20, $30, $25, something like that. $20, that's what I paid for mine. And they're good. And if you care more about an environmentally conscious pad, Prologix has got you there a little bit, but I will get to why there is another pad that is kind of better, but I would understand why you would go with this if you wanted more recycled material and stuff like that, because they actually do use recycled rubber for their backside, which is their less articulate side, which mimics more of a gum rubber. They use recycled rubber for that. I forget the percentage, or if it's all that. And then they use a little bit in here, not as much on this articulate side. And it's just a no frills standard pad. And it's got a plastic rim, you know. And then, so it doesn't eat through your sticks, which is great. It's a little thinner. I don't like it as much, but it's good. And the pad sounds a little weird. I say that because it's not as articulate and tight sounding, but it feels alright. It feels fine. It's a non-offensive pad, to say the least. And then the other side is really not that much quieter. Whether it's from the material they used, it's a little higher pitched, and it sounds a little better in my opinion. But it just sounds like more of what like an Evans real feel will sound like. So if you're getting it for this backside that's a little bit quieter, I actually bought this pad specifically because I was looking for a new 12-inch pad, and I wanted something with a quieter backside, and this was the quietest backside that I could find, despite the fact that it's really not. I think it was just in the scenario I was in, because in the tent, everything is quiet because everything is loud, because you're at a marching event and everyone's playing on cymbals, marching snares, and all that jazz, and testing out earbuds with that, and it's weird, or earplugs. But this pad, while not a lot of people know about it, and it's one of my more fun pads, I can't recommend it outside of mine. I can't recommend it because Off-World simply makes better products for the money. If you want recycled materials and you want a more environmentally conscious pad, I would recommend you to Beetle Percussion. And what Beetle Percussion has been doing is they've been making pads out of wood used from trees that have been eaten out in California by these invasive beetles, essentially. And they remake the pads there, and they're a great cause. I really wanted to get my hands actually on one of the bracelets that they sell, because for each pad, or the bracelets as well, they dedicate to planting a certain amount of trees. I forget how many trees it is per pad. I know it's 6 for the bracelet, but they're basically a really environmentally conscious group, and I really love what they do, and I've always wanted to pick up a Beetle Percussion pad. The only problem with them versus Prologix is $60 for a 12-inch pad. Not too bad. Beetle Percussion is like $80, and if you wanted a marching one, like the Jack Signature, I forget what it's called, that's like $120. So you're paying Xymox prices for a pad that sounds basically about the same as this, and plays basically about the same as this mixed with a real feel. So it's still a decent pad to play on, but it doesn't feel any better than a real feel. It doesn't sound any better than this. So the pads you're not buying the pad for the quality and how good it is, you're buying it because of the environmental consciousness of it. And that's the same that's going to go for this Prologix pad. You're not going to buy this Prologix pad because you're like, this is the best sounding pad, this is the best feeling pad. You're going to go, I don't have the money to get a Beetle Percussion pad, but I still want a decent sounding pad that uses recycled materials and is better for the environment, so I'm going to get a Prologix pad. Because Beetle Percussion pads are great. Their 6-inch ones I think are like $40, and I've wanted to get my hands on one of those, but they go sold out so frequently. It's really hard to get them in stock, and anything that is in stock is usually the ones that cost like $120 or $180 for that custom wood style and whatnot, and that's for one-sided pads as well. And yeah, that's gonna wrap up Prologix. I loved their Logix series when they did variations of how much rebound you wanted back when they used to do that, like 3-4 years ago, like not too long ago, was when they did that. Like 4 or 5 years ago was when they still sold that at Dayton, Ohio, where they did their Blue Thunder pad, which is more of a conditioning pad. The green one was in between. It kind of felt the best, and red one was like super bouncy. Their Red Thunder, and yeah, when they did that, I really liked it. It didn't justify to get the 12-inch ones for $60, but yeah, I don't know. Felt a little downhill. That's about it. The last section here I want to do is the practice pads I've acquired over the years and I would recommend to buy. But, you know, they're cool and fun to have, I guess. If you bought as many practice pads as I have. This is actually from a garage sale. It's a Remo pad. It's like 8 or 9 inch pad, because they're 6 inches, really small. And I actually own my own my father's old Remo practice pad, which is a 6 inch, really beat in, really worn. That was like the old concert percussion staple. Like if you played concert percussion, that was the pad you got. And because it was cheap, worked well, you could get the big ones for like $20 or something. Don't buy your kid this. Don't buy it in general. Please save your ears. Save yourself some time. Save yourself some money. Do not buy it. You wouldn't use your grandpa's laptop. Don't use your grandpa's practice pad. Because these practice pads, what they do is they have these bolts, essentially. These 8 bolts in here are used to tighten the pad, and they use an actual like miniature drum head. So if you can imagine a concert snare without the beads, or without the string, the snare string on the bottom, and how loud that would be, you will get an idea for just how loud these pads are. And the worst part is, because you're using a concert snare head, you can't use marching sticks on them. The reason you can't use marching sticks on these is because you will dent the head. You will physically damage and break the head, because they are not meant to take that big of a stick, and that thick of a stick, hitting the pad at that time. So do yourself a favor. Do not buy these pads. They are fun though. I got it for like $5 at a garage sale. There was this woman that like was really keen on trying to get them. Super fun. And this pad I don't have as many good memories with, but it's a pad I own, and I think it comes up. It might not come up. This is an old style pad actually, and this is like an original like practice pad style when they were first starting to make practice pads, because they figured they could use the angle, and it's got a hard plastic surface there. It's like, I want to say about as tacky as an Evans Real Feel backside, but is not as good for your sticks. So there are some rubbers that are just bad for sticks, and a lot of reputable brands will not have that problem, but this one will. It's all made out of wood and sanded and all that, so it'll get everywhere. It's just a really cool thing to kind of have. I saw it, I picked it up, it was $20. I wouldn't recommend it for practicing, because you might damage the heads of your sticks, you might chip the wood, but, and you can hear there's actually some clicking, which means it's not completely glued to the base there, but it's kind of cool, I guess. And this one's old. You can't get this pad anymore. This is a 6-inch movement Drumco pad. Now they make a 12-inch nowadays, which I used to own, and that'll be in the I don't own but I've played section. But these pads are on. I remember this pad. I have fond memories of this pad. I wouldn't recommend it anymore if you can even get your hands on this, because I know Movement Drum Co. does not sell these pads anymore. But these were like 6-inch. You can still find the YouTube video online, I'm pretty sure, though. I think they still have that up for some reason. This is a 6-inch pad with a little bit of like a neoprene gum rubber, if you will, like a neoprene surface on one side. So it is pretty bouncy. And the other side is this sticky coating material, and it's got a full kind of like rubber rim, and it came in different colors and stuff. And I picked it up because I thought it might be like the ultimate, take anywhere practice pad. The problem with this practice pad, while I actually love the rim, it's probably my favorite sounding and feeling rim ever. It feels like a really bouncy kind of plastic, and it like makes a sound that I actually kind of enjoy. If I can even, not really, and it's great, except for the fact that the sticky surface didn't really work well. If you put this on the floor, consider it done. So they made it washable so you can wash off the dirt, but after like after so many washes, it really doesn't stick anymore. It could technically stick on walls, didn't really do that well. And because there's no like durable backing, like you can see it flops around, because of the sticky surface, you can't play it on your lap. Physically can't. It'll just pop right through like a piece of paper. And kind of useless in that fact. And if it stops sticking to things, which eventually it just does, and a lot sooner than you think, especially if what you put it on is as dirty as it is. Like if you put it on a floor, it's done. The dirtier the surface, the more you're going to have to wash it, the shorter this is going to last, and the less likely you're going to have this for a good amount of time. But it comes with a cool little carrying case, actually, which I liked the fact that Movement Drum Co. even did that. That was pretty neat back when I got it. And I'm going to save that one. This one's very fun. We are not going to even hit this pad. This was the cheapest drum pad I could find on Amazon. I don't think they sell it anymore. But this was a $10 drum pad, about the cheapest you're ever going to find. And essentially, it is a octagon of wood with this hard plastic just glued on. And for your snare stand, there's just a hole drilled in here. Yeah, it's not made any differently. It's just hard plastic on wood with a hole in the middle. And I tried out this pad, and while it sounds awful, it feels awful, it actually damages your sticks as well. So I stopped playing it immediately. I can even see a little bit of the pencil mark where he outlined where he's supposed to put the other part of the pad. But it damages your sticks. So, like, I've literally had chips on the tips of my sticks before because of that practice pad. No good. This practice pad is probably my favorite useless pad. And the reason I call it my favorite useless pad is because I have a lot of memories with the pad. And it started a lot of when I started actually picking up more pads and whatnot. Which I kind of regret now, but oh well. This is a Prologix pad. This is the Prologix Green Series. I don't think they had a fancy name for this one, like the Blue Lightning and Red Thunder and stuff like that. And that was out of their Logix series specifically. And they don't really sell these anymore. They focus now on their marching line, and I don't think they sell them in 6 inches at all, even if they do. I think they might sell the 12-inch still. I don't think so, though. This is like a really bouncy surface, and it was really good, actually. and it like felt good, and it was good. And there was a backside that was like a it was the corpse pad side, and it like sounds all right. It feels all right. It's good, except it's 6 inches. So it's a good pad. It's great. I wouldn't recommend it in the 12-inch because for $60, this isn't going to replace an Outlander. It's not going to replace an Invader or anything by Off-World. It's not going to replace your marching pad or anything. And it's going to be more expensive than a real feel, while still being only just as good. And then maybe having a rim, so that is a good thing, I guess. But as a 6-inch $20 pad, with the corpse side on the back, this was a good versatile thing that I actually used to keep in my jacket all the time. I had friends that used to call it a hockey puck because it looked like I had a hockey puck in my jacket at all times, and I would play this through the jacket. And that was the only way I can keep it on the table, because the problem with 6 inches, especially ones that have like corpse sides on the back, is they don't have any surface that's like sticking them to the table that makes it so it's non-slip. So when you play on it, it's going to move around, and it's going to like literally hop up and down as you play it. And especially if you try to play in your lap, it's not good. It works in limited capacity, and I made it work in limited capacity, but otherwise, not that good. In my pockets here, actually, are 2 other pads. This is the $1 practice pad from Prologix, and I got this when I was in Dayton, Ohio. They were selling this for $1. They had a stand, and they were like, yeah, $1 practice pad. It's like 3 inches around, and it has this like weird kind of rubber surface on the back here, and they glued essentially one of those the surfaces, the high articulate surfaces that they put in like inserts, or they put on the Xymox pads or anything like that, like this glass surface, and it works. It sounds fine, except it's like 3 inches and there's no back. So it's really cool. It's kind of tacky, and it really doesn't serve much for use. But it was only $1, and it's like, now you can say I have a 3-inch $1 practice pad anywhere I go. But I think they upped the price of this. I bought it for $20. I think it was $25 now. The other one in my pocket is the one that actually a friend of mine hates, because I kept it on me always. I would keep it in my hat that I marched with and all that stuff, and that is a Gibraltar PPP pocket practice pad. And this one is honestly one of my favorite pads, and it's like, if you need something that just like you can keep with you pretty much everywhere you go, this pad is honestly kind of a fun time. You can fit this almost everywhere. It's a 3-inch pad, so it can fit in your pocket. It can fit like, you know, easily in a bag, in a phone holster. It can fit almost anywhere. There was a video online on Instagram of a girl who had a bike and was playing, like, had a thing attached to the bike. You could probably not even retrofit your bike to specifically be for that. You could probably put this on, like, literally just like wrap around the leg strap onto the front of it and then play it like that. It's that good. And the metal back that this has gives it actually a decent amount of structure. And there's this gum rubber here, 1/4 inch gum rubber, that is the same amount of gum rubber that the real feel uses, so it feels kind of like a real feel. Doesn't sound as much like it, and it's a lot smaller, so it is harder to play on. And you're not going to be testing out any crazy stick tricks with like back sticking or cross sticking or anything like that, because there's not enough space. But this is really good for practicing literally anywhere. And it's pretty quiet because it's only 3 inches, so it doesn't have a lot of space to resonate. and it doesn't, and it's only gum rubber, so it's not that loud, and it quite literally sounds like tapping. It's one of the only practice pads that my family's actually approved of, because they said, yeah, it sounds like tapping. Like it didn't sound any worse than if I was hitting my leg with my hands. Like, it's basically the same. And you hit it with drumsticks, and it's almost exactly the same as well. So yeah, that's my entire collection, if you will, of practice pads. And yeah, I honestly, Gibraltar, the PPP pad, is the only one out of that huge, that like miscellaneous section that I would recommend actually for percussionists, because you could take it anywhere. If for some reason your drum tech is like, you need to bring practice pads up to the stands, but you don't want to lug a 12-inch pad and you're worried about losing your nice $60 pad, this for like $25, and a leg strap, so it doesn't matter that it's small because you can strap it to your leg so it's not going anywhere, is kind of a perfect fit. And if you're worried that like your legs are too small, I have really tiny legs and they work. And if you have a bigger leg, it'll work even better because there'll be more tension. So it works. But that's all of the practice pads I own. And I guess the miscellaneous did own thoughts section next. So this is kind of like the wrap up last section here. And this is for practice pads I've played on and don't own, or practice pads I used to own and no longer do. This is for the, practice pads that most people ask about or usually end up getting, like the Vic Firth stock pad, or the heavy hitter pad, the Movement Drumco's becoming a little more popular. It's still a pretty niche pad. The 12-inch variety. They have a few other. There's also the carbon fiber pad by, I forget what they're called, but they're literally the only carbon fiber pad out anymore. And they have like the big metal ring. They're like $60. You could find them a little bit more easily now. There's a few other pads on the horizon, but I'll just talk on the ones that I used to own. I actually used to own a Prologix 14, I think it was like either a 13 or a 14-inch pad, and that was their hybrid pad. So that on the back had these small little rings for like a tenor pad, and on the other side had that kind of glassy coat of a high, what's it called? High rebound, high articulation pad. And it even had an insert if you needed more articulation. It was a really bizarre pad, and it wasn't that good. I'll be straight. It was probably my least favorite pad I ever owned. I was really excited for it. I got it for Christmas one time, and it was a pain, because anything above 12 inches is almost impossible to take anywhere. So when they made like a bigger pad than normal, you couldn't fit it in a backpack. You couldn't fit it, you could barely fit in a duffel. I mean, it was annoying trying to bring it around to school to actually play on it. And that was when I figured out I hate the glassy surface, because your stick moves around because there's nothing catching the stick. There is nothing to give it any sort of friction. It just kind of slides as you play, and it creates this slicing motion, and it'll eventually have you start slicing as you play, because you're used to it never really catching the stick. So your wrist kind of just moves with it. And when you start to play, you'll start slicing. That's really bad, because you'll never be able to get clean, fast, articulate strokes. So it'll cap your speed and it'll cap your technique. So I really don't recommend them, actually. The other pad that I used to own was the Movement Drumco 12-inch 3-in-1 pad. That is a 12-inch pad that has a gum rubber on top with a rubber rim. On the back side is another, it's supposed to be a low profile, like quieter surface. And then they have two inserts. One is a conditioning insert, and then one is an articulate insert. That pad I gave away as well because the rim was starting to come off. The glue had actually given way, and every time you hit a rim shot, it would come up. That pad had a few quirks to it. The gum rubber is really articulate on both sides, and it sounds really good. The rim was too loud. They used a really thick plastic, and it was the only pad that I actually got a noise complaint from my neighbors. Not from the people in my house, but from the people up the hill from me, through my backyard, because I had my, it was just the mesh door that was separating from the outside, and my neighbor had actually come down and complained and was like, "You're playing too loud." And I've heard a neighbor quite literally playing a marching bass drum in his basement from top left of me, in my neighborhood, and I don't think he's ever gotten a complaint. But that practice pad, the rim on it was so loud that I actually did. So that's a really weird quirk to it, especially since it wasn't a metal rim. But the conditioning insert of it actually worked really well. It was really quiet, worked really well. The articulate surface was that glassy texture, so I never really liked it. It works well for what it is, but it's not my style, so you know how I feel about that. Overall, great pad, great all-arounder. It fits a weird niche. It wants to be everything, but it's kind of a jack of all trades, where it's better to get two pads that kind of serve that realm. Like what my recommendation is to get a Reflex and an Outlander, which will cost about $95 overall, but you're going to get a really good conditioning pad with a good quiet, good rebound surface on the other end of it. And then if you need that more percussion or like high articulation marching feel, you have the Outlander. It plays well, and it has the other side, which is that non-slip surface that you can use to play at 3 to 6 inches to be a little bit quieter. Anything above that or any articulation within the strokes, you'll just play through it. It won't make a difference. Moving on from that, one of the pads that is really popular is the Vic Firth heavy hitter pad and stock pad. And if I was just starting out and I only had $40 to spend, I would get the stock pad. The heavy hitter pad, I think, has a thicker gum rubber and is more made for marching sticks. But the stock pad sounds great, feels great. It is a marching pad. If you need to hear articulation and you don't mind a little bit more noise, that pad is really great. It's $40. It's 12 inches. It's a super great pad, very durable. I've seen people go 3.5 years with that practice pad, playing on it nonstop as their only practice pad before they changed or upgraded pads. They physically did not use another practice pad for like 3 years, and that served it all throughout. It served through rain, it served through heavy hitting and heavy playing and lots of hours, and it's a great practice pad, and Vic Firth makes them well. Heavy hitter one, I don't see as much, but it's still a really good practice pad, especially if you need it to be a little bit quieter and you don't care as much about that fine articulation that like the wannabe YouTubers like geek over. Some other practice pads is I believe it's Asics. It's not Asics. It's something. There's a practice pad out there. If you look up carbon fiber practice pad, it's a 6-inch with a metal rim, and it's got a carbon fiber surface. And I used to really want this practice pad because I really wanted a carbon fiber pad to see the difference. Movement Drum Co. used to sell one, but by the time I was looking at it, they didn't sell it anymore. Their new marching snare pad is not carbon fiber. It's just a glass surface over it, because it was costing too much for them to produce, even though they were really good pads, really clean looking pads, and I honestly wish I got one, but they were out of stock by the time I did, and they were making the redesign of their 3-in-1 pad by the time I was looking. So, unless they've remade the carbon fiber pad, which I doubt it, but yeah. The only one I know of is it's a 12-inch metal rim surface, and it's got this little like circle in the middle for its playing surface, where it's like it's a strike zone pad, which Prologix also makes one of those. Beetle Percussion also makes a strike zone pad. It's good if you're starting out and you need to play in the center and you need something visual. I don't think it's necessary. The problem with that pad is the carbon fiber actually requires you to play with a nylon stick and nothing else on that surface. Because if you use wood, it'll actually damage the surface a lot faster. Because if you play on anything with a wooden stick and you hit it repeatedly, it's going to do wear and tear, it's going to do damage. But with that practice pad in particular, it actually is not made for some reason for wooden tips, which is 98% of all drumsticks and whatnot. So, you know, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's a thing that exists. I would recommend getting it. There's, of course, the Invader, which I don't own. And I've talked about that with the Outlander, and it's not my favorite. Not my favorite at all. There is other practice pads that I probably haven't been able to cover, and probably will not all know them all. If there's any practice pads that you've been looking at and you're like, hey, could you take a look at this and see if it's any good? I'll give it a once over in the comments there, and I'll look it over and I'll see the specs on it, and I'll tell you whether or not I think it's a good pad or not. Because based on the thickness of the gum rubber and what material they use, 9 times out of 10, it's pretty easy to decipher what that practice pad's close relative is or what it's going to sound like. Because gum rubber is one of the most common materials used, and gets that concert feel while still being able to take a beating from marching sticks, unlike a actual drum head like used in the Remo pads, or a hard plastic that'll damage your sticks. So depending on the thickness of it, it's really doesn't make a difference. There was these green pads that kind of were like they just marketed themselves as the cheap drum pad, and they weren't really that good. So that's really about it. That'll wrap it up for me. In conclusion, if you wanted my recommendation on a drum pad and you forgot it already, get a Reflex pad. Best pad, in my opinion. But with COVID, if you need a pad that you can rely on to, make drum videos for auditions and other things, get yourself a off-world Outlander. That will probably be your best overall pick. $35, really articulate, sounds just as good if not better than any of the Outlanders, or any of the Invaders that Off-World makes, and a better rim. That's it for me. Thanks.